Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at All Fools by George Chapman from 1604-ish. We have done two-thirds of the play. We've done the first three acts. We did it slightly too compressed amount of time. I think we were perhaps unfair to the play in the way the format ran, but I wanted to get a reasonable amount of elbow room for these last two acts as the comic business unfurls, hopefully in a satisfactory way. And to find out how the play is going to end, we have this wonderful room of readers. So reading Dariotto today is...
Connor from London.
Reading Rinaldo today is...
Alan in Suffolk.
Reading The Notary and Epilogue is...
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Gostanzo, Page and Drawer is...
Lois in London.
Reading Gratiana today is... Gratiana is... Mr. Nader?
Oh, sorry. Very, very switched on and awake Simon Nader in Dublin.
Reading Fortunio today is...
Lynn in the Northwest U.S.
Reading Gazetta today is...
Aliki in London, in Athens. That's where I am.
The other London, Athens.
I loved earlier. It was like there are two characters with whose first letter begins with G, and neither person was quite sure if it was theirs. Reading Valerio today is...
Sarah Blake in The Hague.
And reading Marc today is...
Donald in Northamptonshire.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions, generally moving us forward and finding out how we go. So we're in Act 4. There's been a little interval to trim some candles. Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Marc Antonio and Gostanzo.
You see how too much wisdom evermore outshoots the truth. You were so forward still to tax my ignorance, my green experience in these grey hairs, for giving such advantage to my son's spirit that he durst undertake a secret match so far short of his worth. Your son, so seasoned with obedience, even from his youth that all his actions relish nothing but duty and your angers fear. What shall I say to you if it fall out that this most precious son of yours has played a part as bad as this and as rebellious? Nay, more, has grossly gulled your wit withal? My son has undergone the blame that appertained to yours, and that this wench with which my son is charged may call you father. Shall I then say you want experience, you're green, you're credulous, easy to be blinded?
Good Marc Antonio. When it comes to that, laugh at me, call me fool, proclaim me so. Let all the world take knowledge I am an ass.
Oh, the good God of gods, how blind is pride! What eagles we are still in matters that belong to other men. What beetles in our own. I tell you, knight, it is confessed to be as I have told you. And Gratiana is by young Rinaldo and your white son brought to me as his wife. Now think you now, sir?
Even just as before, and have more cause to think. Honest credulity is a true lodestone to draw on decrepity. You have a heart too open to embrace all that your ear receives. Alas, good man, all this is but a plot for entertainment within your house for your poor son's young wife. My house, without huge danger, cannot hold.
Is possible? What danger, sir, I pray?
I'll tell you, sir. 'Twas time to take her thence. My son, that last day you saw, could not frame his looks to entertain her. Now, by Our Lady, is grown a courtier. For myself, unseen, saw when he courted her, embraced and kissed her. And I can tell you, left not much undone that was the proper office of your son.
What world is this?
I told this to Rinaldo, advising him to fetch her from my house, and his young wit not knowing where to lodge her unless with you, and saw that could not be without some wile, I presently suggested this quaint device, to say she was my son's. And all this plot, good Marc Antonio, flowed from this fount only to blind your eyes.
Out of how sweet a dream have you awaked me! By heaven, I durst have laid my part in heaven, all had been true. Oh, it was so lively handled, and drawn with such a seeming face of truth. Your son had cast a perfect veil of grief over his face, for his so rash offence to seal his love with act of marriage before his father had subscribed his choice. My son, my circumstance lessening the fact, entreating me to break the matter to you, and joining my effectual persuasions with your son's penitent submission, appease your fury. I at first assented, and now expect their coming to that purpose.
'Twas well, 'twas well. Seem to believe it still. Let art end what credulity began. When they come, suit your words and looks to theirs. Second my sad son's feigned submission, and see in all points how my brain will answer his disguised grief with a set countenance of rage and choler. Now observe, and learn to school your son by me.
And we'll pause there just to sort of take on where we are, because it's like, remember, there was this plot, and it was quite complicated because there's people who are in love with other people, but there's disagreements about whether they should be together, and they've arranged to do a swap and pretend to be each other's interested love parties to confuse the elder members of families. And now they're getting together and going, hang on, we've been lied to. And I can't remember whether this is due to a lie or whether one of these is lying now. Lois could probably remind me what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that happened was that Gostanzo, eavesdropping, everybody seems to eavesdrop on everybody, saw Valerio acting much too amorously towards what in fact is his wife, but what he's persuaded them is the other guy's wife, Fortunio's. So of course, Gostanzo is now horrified that not only that his son, who he thought didn't care for women at all, turns out to be extremely randy, but also that he's doing this with somebody else's wife or some. So he thinks he should get out of the house, and then in order to get him into Marc Antonio's house, I think Rinaldo, he tells all this to Rinaldo, who then quickly, realizing that the whole thing is about to fall apart if he's not careful, persuades him to tell Marc Antonio. They're going to tell Marc Antonio what in fact is the truth, but is really being presented to Gostanzo as a lie about the relationship of these two, in order to get, because Gostanzo thinks the one thing he must do is get this guy out of his house before he starts committing adultery with somebody else's wife. So that's why, so at the beginning of this scene, Marc Antonio, who's heard all of this off stage and believed it, of course, is now being laughed at by Gostanzo, who thinks he knows the whole story, whereas in fact Gostanzo is the one who's an absolute idiot, because the whole thing is really a double deception. So I don't know if that makes it any
telling
clearer.
the truth by accident, against his better nature. So yeah, and I say, hopefully, within the context of a show that has been crafted so that you actually make sure these plot points are coming across, this won't be horribly confusing. But it's been 24 hours since we last looked at this play, and a lot of water went under that bridge, so we're all a little bit confused. And that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about it. But I quite like the way the scene flowed. I quite like the dialogue between them. I thought that you know, in terms of what their motivations for the scene coming are, they're very clear, even if you might be slightly confused about the rest of the thing. But you've got these people coming on stage now, and they have clear motivations in regard to them, which is quite nice. Any additional thoughts in the room beyond what the hell's going on?
Everybody's lying all the time. I mean, that's the thing. They're all putting on an act for each other. It's quite difficult to keep that straight, but it's very satisfying, because Gostanzo is so obnoxious that it's nice to see him, you know, feeling so pleased with himself when he has no reason to be.
Yes, and it's we're not used to this level amount of lying in an early modern play. The thing about early modern plays is, a lot of the time people just tell the truth and, and they express their feelings. It's all very direct. When you have this number of people all lying to each other, occasionally throwing a crumb to the audience by going, "I'm lying now. Did you notice? What an idiot for him believing me." But yeah, there's quite a lot of complex stuff going on there. Aliki.
There's something really interesting to me anyway about Gostanzo, which is that he's the antagonist basically of the piece, without really being its villain. He doesn't mean ill. He's perhaps an over-strict father. Okay, he's definitely an over-strict father, but he basically wants the best for everybody in his own pushy and obnoxious way. But he's effectively the villain because pretty much everybody is working against him in one way or another, except poor old Marc Antony, who is more or less his sidekick, dupe.
Yeah, you get the impression Marc Antonio just it's just a leaf in the wind. Donald.
I was going to say that Gostanzo has this really interesting line, "Let art end what credulity began." Yeah, so it's adding an extra layer of artifice to all of the other deception. So, yes, you were wrong the first time, but just now pretend to.
Yeah.
Right, with the added irony that he was in fact completely right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with mid-scene, I think we've just got ourselves up to speed a bit, which is what we needed to be. So observe and learn as enter a Rinaldo, Valerio, and Gratiana.
On with your mask. Here come the other maskers, sir.
Come on, say. Your father, with submission, will be calmed. Come on, down on your knees.
Villain, darest thou presume to gull thy father? Dost thou not tremble to see my bent and cloudy brows ready to thunder on thy graceless head, and with the bolt of my displeasure cut the thread of all my living from thy life, for taking thus a beggar to thy wife?
Father, if that part I have in your blood, if tears which so abundantly distill out of my inward eyes, and for a need can drown these outward, lend me thy handkerchief, and being indeed as many drops of blood issuing from the creator of my heart, be able to forget so much compassion, not on my life, but on this lovely dame whom I hold dearer than...
Out upon thee, villain!
Nay, good Gostanzo, think you are a father.
I will not hear a word. Out upon thee! Wed without my advice, my love, my knowledge, aye, and a beggar too, a trull, a blouse.
You thought not so last day, when you offered her a 12 months' board for one night's lodging with her.
Oh, do no more of that. Peace, good Rinaldo. It is a fault that only she and you know.
Well, sir, go on, I pray.
Have I, fond wretch, with utmost care and labour brought thee up, ever instructing thee, omitting never the office of a kind and careful father, to make thee wise and virtuous like thy father, and hast thou in one act everted all, proclaimed thyself to all the world a fool, to wed a beggar?
Father, say not so.
Nay, she's thy own. Here, rise, fool, take her to thee, live with her still. I know thou count'st thyself happy in soul, only in winning her. Be happy still. Here, take her hand, enjoy her. Would not a son hazard his father's wrath, his reputation in the world, his birthright, to have but such a mess of broth as this?
Oh, be not so violent, I pray you, good Gostanzo. Take truce with passion, license your sad son to speak in his excuse.
What excuse? Can any orator in this case excuse him? What can he say? What can be said of any?
Alas, sir, hear me. All that I can say in my excuse is but to show love's warrant.
Notable wag.
I know I have committed a great impiety, not to move you first before the day I meant to take my wife. Consider what I am, yet young and green. Behold what she is. Is there not in her eye, in her very eye, a power to conquer even age itself and wisdom? Call to mind, sweet father, what yourself, being young, have been. Think what you may be. For I do not think the world's so far spent with you, but you may look back on such a beauty, and, I hope, to see you young again, and to live long with young affections. Wisdom makes a man live young forever. And where is this wisdom, if not in you? Alas, I know not what rests in your wisdom to subdue affections, but I protest it wrought with me so strongly that I had quite been drowned in seas of tears, had I not taken hold in happy time of this sweet hand. My heart had been consumed to a heap of ashes with the flames of love, had it not sweetly been assuaged and cooled with the moist kisses of these sugared lips.
Oh, puissant wag! What huge large thongs he cuts out of his friend Fortunio's stretching leather.
He knows he does it. Blind my eyes.
Oh, excellent. These men will put up anything.
Had I not had her, I had lost my life, which life indeed I would have lost before I had displeased you, had I not received it from such a kind, a wise and honoured father.
Notable boy.
Yet do I here renounce love, life, and all, rather than 1 hour longer endure to have your love eclipsed from me.
Oh, I can hold no longer. If thy words be used in earnest, my Valerio, thou woundst my heart, but I know 'tis in jest.
No, I'll be sworn she has her lily-poop too.
Didst thou not swear in love, in spite of father and all the world, what that naught should sever us but death itself?
I did. But if my father will have his son forsworn, upon his soul the blood of my black perjury shall lie, for I will seek his favour, though I die.
No, no, live still, my son. Thou well shalt know I have a father's heart. Come, join your hands, still keep thy vows, and live together still, till cruel death set foot betwixt you both.
Oh! Speak you this in earnest?
Aye, by heaven.
And never to recall it?
Not till death.
Excellent, sir. You've done like yourself. What would you more, Valerio?
Worshipful father!
Come, sir, come you in and celebrate your joys.
Exeunt all save the old men.
Oh, Marc Antonio, had I not armed you with an expectation, would not this make you pawn your very soul the wench had been my son's wife?
Yes, by heaven. A knavery thus effected might deceive a wiser man than I, for I, alas, am no good politician. Plain believing, simple honesty is my policy still.
The visible marks of folly, honesty, and quick credulity, his younger brother. I tell you, Marc Antonio, there is much in that young boy, my son.
Not much honesty, if I may speak without offence to his father.
Oh, God, you cannot please me better, sir. He has honesty enough to serve his turn. The less honesty ever, the more wit. But go you home and use your daughter kindly. Meantime, I'll school your son, and do you still dissemble what you know. Keep off your son. The wench at home must still be my son's wife. Remember that, and be you blinded still.
You must remember, too, to let your son use his accustomed visitations, only to blind my eyes.
He shall not fail. But still take you heed, have a vigilant eye on that sly child of mine, for by this light he'll be too bold with your son's forehead else.
Well, sir, let me alone. I'll bear a brain.
And exeunt, bears of little brain. So we have a whole load of people play acting various different things. How much they're improving and how much has been prepped in advance. But you said you would die for me. Oh no, it's just bad, and all these various little sort of flies around. The moment I absolutely loved though was Valerio just going, "Lend me a handkerchief. I need to do tears."
Yeah.
I laughed out loud.
by performing play acting. And that I absolutely, you want him to hand him a handkerchief and then an onion drops on the floor. That sort of thing. A gag I've seen many a time. Again, this is a scene. It's quite difficult to read in this context because everybody's lying. Everyone's performing, and therefore again, this whole thing about we sort of feel that everybody should be telling a truth during scenes, but basically everybody's dissembling on some level, and that makes it quite difficult to read and follow what's going on. But yeah, it's all this play is going on, and again, it gives you so much you can play with because that's a license to print money. Lois.
Yeah, and of course, they've got what they wanted because Gostanzo has actually blessed the marriage of his son, which he never would have done otherwise because he only thinks he's pretending to bless a marriage which doesn't actually exist.
So everybody's lying, everybody's confused, everybody's doing the wrong thing for the right thing for the wrong reasons, etc. I'll go to Aliki then, Lynn, I think.
Yeah.
You told us yesterday that the source material for this is a Roman comedy, and I think that really shows in this scene, because while I'm by no means an expert on early modern family life, I don't feel that impiety is the accusation against a son who marries without his father's permission, nor that a father has such absolute rule over who gets to be married and who doesn't, provided they're all adults.
Lynn.
Yeah, so I laughed out loud when Sarah did the aside. Let me a handkerchief, will you? And I was thinking earlier, and I think Sarah's reading tended to confirm my hypothesis that one way to get this to work, you have to have really skilled actors, but there has to be something about their style of acting when they're lying that's different from when they're not lying, so that the audience, even maybe on an unconscious level, can tell when duplicity is going on. So like overacting a little bit when they're in deception mode. So nothing too obvious, but this isn't a realistic play, so I don't think it's legit to say, oh, but the other character would know they were lying if you overacted that much. It's like, no, that's just overact. So that's my idea. It's like you need to have actors good enough to be a lying character and a telling the truth character.
Sarah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind of you, Lynn. But I mean, to be honest, it was in the script. Because I was reading it cold, and I always just, I always kind of look at the first few lines of my next speech just to get a clue for what's going on. And honestly, I have only the sketchiest notion of who's lying to whom and about what in this play. So it wasn't until I saw that line, I read that line, oh, lend me your handkerchief, that I suddenly realised, oh, okay, this is totally, he's conniving and finagling here. So it's kind of like those markers are in the script. I don't know that everybody who's lying has got one, but like I think Chapman has kind of giving you little sort of signs as to what's going on where, and then the actors have got to play it. But I would hope that on stage the audience would those little markers would make it clear who was doing what when.
And also, there's a question of the difference between a boys' company and an adult playing company. That this play is, it's not textually complex in the sense there's quite long speeches, back and forths, but it's not quite physically complicated, or some of those verbal tics that could be really quite tricky to do if you're using a cue script. But you do feel you need to instruct your actors what's going on, and that you need that sort of semi-directorial approach that boys might get from their master in the context of producing a production of this. That you feel the need that someone's going to make sure everyone knows what's going on. Whereas if you're rehearsing off a cue script, or barely rehearsing off a cue script, as an adult playing company might be doing, it's an interesting question of how well they'd cope with a play like this, because it's like, what's my motivation? I haven't got a bloody clue. a Q script approach to this, where you don't really see the rest of the text in situ, would perhaps be really difficult to do. Genuinely confusing.
I mean, that's just like there's the actor's nightmare right there.
Yeah. Because motivation for early modern actors is not necessarily the same as we would have today. But you still need to know what you're basically doing, your function in the scene is on some level. Sarah.
That is such a good point, and it hadn't occurred to me, but I guess that is probably why plays are structured, as you were saying earlier, in the way that usually in most of them people are telling the truth, unless they're very obviously lying, and that's a set up plot line that we know about. I wonder if that's because
explaining that they're lying.
Exactly, yeah.
So you know exactly where you live.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because, like with Q script rehearsing, you just can't do that. You just can't do that with an adult playing company at this time.
Yeah, though I do suspect about 10 years further down the line that there's more rehearsal going on than is usually acknowledged. Yeah. I genuinely think the complexity of the plays sort of defies that. And that's not to say they wouldn't be rehearsing with Q scripts. I'm sure they wouldn't waste paper by asking them to copy out the whole damn play. But again, just that sense of a potential process where there's a sort of tutor-student relationship going on there that is analogous, if not exactly the same, as a director-actor marker there.
You were saying about practice must have changed in the restoration, and and we know it did because there's a play called The Rehearsal from I don't remember the year, but it's in the
it's in the 60s.
Early
70s, I think. I think it's about 1673, something like that.
Not long after the restoration, they were rehearsing. It seemed like an established practice when that play was written. So,
the problem is we don't have a call sheet to get in a sense of what people are doing all day. And that is the question I always ask, what are actors doing all day? Well, are they rehearsing the play they have never done before, or are they rehearsing the play they have done before before performing it? Anyway, that's a much longer conversation for another forum. Anyway, Lois.
Well, I'm sure they weren't thrown on the stage with, just the knowledge of their lines and expected to sort of work out what they were doing from watching the other people. I mean, it can't have been that ramshackle. I think that, they had enough rehearsal time to work it out. But I think this play is tricky because if you were working certainly purely from Q scripts, the only people that would know that the scene that follows is being made up by everybody and is a lot of play acting would be the two old guys, because they've talked about that in the previous scene. But everybody else comes on stage apparently not knowing, although they, again, Valerio, it's Rinaldo's a conversation with Gostanzo also establishes some of it, but most of these people wouldn't know. I mean, in performance, I think one thing that would be a lot clearer would just be that every time the young people are together without the old people around, it would be just very obvious which were the two couples. And that's crucial, really, to keep in one's head that it's these two together and these two together and not these two,
Yes, it's it's even harder for us, reading it, but also reading it when I swap all the parts around between sessions. So it's like we have no continuity of who anyone is, just to be doubly confusing. Okay, well, let's dive into Act 4, Scene 2. Enter, and again, that might be a semi-artificial break, but in practice, it's useful for us. Act 4, Scene 2, enter Valerio and Rinaldo.
Come, they are gone.
Gone? They were far gone here.
Gulled I my father, or gulled he himself? Thou toldst him Gratiana was my wife. I have confessed it. He has pardoned it.
Nothing more true. And thou can witness it. And therefore, when he comes to learn the truth, and certainly for all these sly disguises, time will strip truth into her nakedness. Thou hast a good play against him to confess the honoured action, and to claim his pardon.
'Tis true. For all was done, he deeply swore, out of his heart.
He has much face the whiles, but swore a thing so quite against his heart.
Why, this is policy.
Well, See you repair to Gratiana daily and enjoy her in her true kind. And now we must expect a resolute and ridiculous divorce. Cornelio has sued against his wedlock.
I think it be not so. The ass dotes on her.
'Tis true, and thou shalt answer it, for setting such debate twixt man and wife. See, we shall see the solemn manner of it.
And having explained what happened in the previous scene after it happened, we now have the entrance of Cornelio, and setting up the next scene there as well. Enter Cornelio, Dariotto, Claudio, Notary, Page, Gazetta, Bellanora, and Gratiana. And I appear not to have given out a Bellanora. I assume Bellanora just says this line and never says anything again. So, good Signor Cornelio, let us poor gentlewomen entreat you to forbear. Please tell me I've given out a Cornelio as well. I'm doing well today, aren't I? Right, I haven't done that either. Right. Anyone not in this scene?
Fortunio's not, so...
Fortunio. Who's Fortunio?
I'm Fortunio, so...
Then you're Cornelio as well for the moment. Okay, I'm doing well.
Okay.
I'll give you the cue in again.
Hang on.
Signor Cornelio, let us poor gentlewomen entreat you to forbear.
Talk no more to me. I'll not be made a cuckold in my own house. Notary, read me the divorce.
My dear Cornelio, examine the cause better before you condemn me.
Sing to me no more, siren, for I will hear thee no more. I will take no compassion on thee.
Oh, good Signor Cornelio, be not too mankind against your wife. Say you are a cuckold, as the best that is may be so at a time. Will you make a trumpet of your own horns?
Go to, sir, you're a rascal. I'll give you a fee for pleading for her one day. Notary, do your office.
Go to, Signor. Look better to your wife, and be better advised before you grow to this extremity.
Extremity? Go to, I deal but too mercifully with her. If I should use extremity with her, I might hang her at her hope's mate, my drudge here. How say you, Master Notary? Might I not do it by law?
Not hang 'em, but you may bring 'em both to a white sheet.
Nay, by the mass, they've had too much of the sheet already.
And besides, you may set capital letters on their foreheads.
What's that to the capital letter that's written in mine? I say, for all your law, Master Notary, that I may hang him. May I not hang him that robs me of mine honor, as well as he that robs me of my horse?
No, sir, your horse is a chattel.
So is honor. A man may buy it with his penny, and if I may hang a man for stealing my horse, as I say, much more for robbing me of my honor. For why, if my horse be stolen, it may be watched, or it may be my own fault. But why? Either the stable is not strong enough, or the pasture is not well fenced, or watched, or so forth. But for your wife that keeps the stable of your honor, let her be locked in a brazen tower. Let Argus himself keep her. Yet can you never be secure of your honor. For why? She can run through all with her serpent noodle. Besides, you may hang a lock upon your horse, and so can you not upon your wife.
But pray you, sir, what's the presumptions on which you would build this divorce?
Presumption enough, sir, for besides their intercourse for commerce of glances that passed betwixt this cockerel drone and her at my table the last Sunday night at supper, their winks, their becks, Dieu garde, their treads on the toe, as by heaven I swear she trod once upon my toe instead of his. This is chiefly to be noted. The same night she would needs lie alone, and the same night her dog barked. Did you hear him, Valerio?
And understand him too. I'll be sworn of a book.
Why, very good. If these not be manifest presumptions now, let the world be judge. Therefore, without more ceremony, Master Notary, pluck your instrument.
I will, sir, if there be no remedy.
Have you made it strong in law, Master Notary? Have you put in words enough?
I hope so, sir. It has taken me a whole skin of parchment, you see.
Very good. And is egress and regress in?
I'll warrant you, sir, it is forma juris.
Is there no hole to be found in the orthography?
None in the world, sir.
You have written sunt with an S, have you not?
Yes, I have. That I have.
Have you done the better for quietness' sake? Aye. And are none of the authentical dashes over the head left out? If there be, Master Notary, an error will lie on it.
Not for a dash overhead, sir, I warrant you, if I should oversee. I have seen that tried in Petiro and Cassio, in Butler and Cason's case, decimo sexto of Duke Anonimo.
You've got a learned notary, Signor Cornelio.
He's a shrewd fellow indeed. I had as lief have his head in a matter of felony or treason as any notary in Florence. Read out, Master Notary. Hearken you, mistress. Gentlemen, mark, I beseech you.
We will all mark you, sir, I warrant you.
I think it would be something tedious to read all, and therefore, gentlemen, the sum is this, that you, Signor Camilio, gentlemen, for diverse and sundry weighty and mature considerations, you especially moving, specifying all the particulars of your wife's enormities in a schedule hereunto annexed, the transcript whereof is in your own tenure, custody, occupation, and keeping, that for these, the aforesaid premises, I say, you renounce, disclaim, and discharge Gazetta from being your lawful or your lawful wife, and that you eftsoons divide, disjoin, separate, remove, and finally enloin, sequester, and divorce her from your bed and your board, that you forbid her all access, repair, egress, or regress to your person or persons, mansion or mansions, dwellings, habitations, romances, or abodes, or to any shop, cellar, solar, easements, chamber, dormer, and so forth. Now that in that the tenure, custody, occupation, or keeping of this said Camilio, notwithstanding all former contracts, covenants, bargains, conditions, agreements, compacts, promises, vows, affiances, assurances, bonds, bills, indentures, poll deeds, deeds of gifts, defeasances, fiefments, endowments, vouchers, double vouchers, privy entries, actions, declarations, explications, rejoinders, surrejoinders, rights, interests, demands, claims, or titles whatsoever, heretofore betwixt the one and the other party or parties, being had, made, passed, covenanted, and agreed, from the beginning of the world till the day of this date thereof, given the 7th of November, 1500, and so forth. Here, sir, you must set your hand.
What else, Master Notary? I am resolute in faith.
Sweet husband, forbear.
Avoid. I charge thee in name of this divorce, thou mightst have looked to it in time. Yet this I will do for thee, if thou canst spy out any other man that thou wouldst cuckold, thou shalt have my letter to him. I can do no more. More ink, Master Notary. I write my name at large.
Here is more, sir.
Ah, ass, that thou could not know thy happiness till thou hadst lost it. How now? My nose bleed. Shall I write in blood? What? Only 3 drops. Foot, this is ominous. I will not set my hand to it now, certain. Master Notary, I like not this abodement. I will defer the setting to of my hand till the next court day. Keep the divorce, I pray you, and the woman in your house together.
Burn the divorce! Burn the divorce!
Not so, sir. It shall not serve her turn. Master Notary, keep it at your peril, and gentlemen, you may be gone. Oh, God's name, what have you to do to flock about me thus? I am neither howlet nor cuckoo. Gentlewomen, for God's sake, meddle with your own cases. It is not fit you should haunt these public assemblies.
Well, farewell, Cornelio. Use the gentlewoman kindly, Master Notary.
As my own wife, I assure you, sir.
Exeunt all but Claudio and Cornelio.
Signor Cornelio, I cannot but in kindness tell you that Valerio by counsel of Rinaldo hath whispered all this jealousy into your ears. Not that he knew any just cause in your wife, but only to be revenged on you for the gull you put upon him when you drew him with his glory to touch the theorbo.
May I believe this?
As I am a gentleman. And if this accident of your nose had not fallen out, I would have told you this before you set to your hand.
It may well be, yet I have cause enough to perfect my divorce. but it shall rest till I conclude with a counterbuff given to these noble rascals. Claudio thanks. What comes of this, watch but my brain a little, and ye shall see, if like 2 parts in me, I leave not both these gullers, wits embriared. Now I perceive well where the wild wind sits. Here's gull for gull, and wits at war with wits.
And exeunt and end of the act. Once again, moving the plot forward, but with a set piece moment of superfluity. I think it would be something tedious to read all, and therefore, gentlemen, I will. I mean, the idea, that's the summary. My God, how long is the actual document? And it's a nice thing about lawyers and just generally the nature of the law. And it's just like, you have to cover all of the bases, so you get them all in. And yes. Alan.
Paid by the line, as lawyers were.
But yeah, and it's nice. You have written "sunt" with an S, have you not?
Yeah, there were a couple of other boys' company tropes in there. I thought of.
Yeah, it's one of those things about it's more a printing thing, and it's probably later than this. Of you've got to be very careful how you spell count. And it's automatic sacking offence, I think, in some print establishments actually. Simon.
I think it's nice that Cornelio has actually found out what's been happening to him before we've reached Act 5, because you usually get the revelation in Act 5 and then it's, well done, I feel this. Now we've got a chance for some revenge, which I'm guessing we're going to have some fun with for the next 11 pages.
Yeah, and it's interesting, all this stuff about, he doesn't sign it. Why? Because he gets a nosebleed unexpectedly. And it's speaking almost to... it's almost like because he brings up, do I write in blood? So it's almost like Faustus, and I think that sort of that there's that feel of almost there's something demonic about what he's trying to do here. There's something rather unpleasant about what he's trying to do here. Though actually, I think his wife would probably be quite glad of a divorce, frankly. I mean, it's like sign the divorce. He's not shouting burn the divorce. Please, dear God, step aside. But I quite like the fact that the playwright is moving the plot on, but allowing these sort of units of set piece action to happen. And they don't feel, it's like I've quite enjoyed all of these set pieces. I quite liked what the page was doing the other day, maybe a bit of a trim, but there was some nice things in there as well, all of which were, at least on some level, serving the plot, even if it was an elaboration on, you didn't need all of that for that scene. But it was quite nice that you got it anyway. Donald?
I was just wondering, because it was written presumably for a specific company, whether those set pieces were written for particular boys, and if he knew that somebody had a very good breath control and could rattle this stuff off in on 2 breaths. Do we know enough about the companies to know whether that would have been the case, that they would have written?
Well,
because it's such a good part that.
There is definitely a sense that writers know the kinds of parts they're writing for specific actors. I don't know what the pecking order in a boys' company would be. In an adult company, there is a clear pecking order. The sharers, you give them the good parts and you give them the parts that they're asking for in terms of comedy, tragedy, or whatever. And then everybody further down the pecking order doesn't really necessarily, they get what they get. With a boys' company, you'd be playing to their strengths.
Yeah.
And you probably know what their strengths are. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you've got, a notary and previously a clerk having these terrific scene stealers. So whether it was an audition piece for an up-and-coming actor to show off, I don't know.
Well, the advantage with what the notary's got here is the notary doesn't necessarily have to learn that speech. It can be a prop that they're just reading off. They just need to be quick, or however they want to play it. I mean, you feel that it's an ensemble moment as well, where everybody else is going, is it the end of the document? No, it's not. Turns the page. And off he goes again. There's a lot of potential there. Lois, then Alan.
Yeah, as far as the pecking order, one thing I do remember is that I think the induction to Cynthia's revels has three boys arguing over who should speak the prologue, and one of them says, why don't we take the votes of the gentlemen, probably the people sitting on the stage, and another one says, no, you're sure to win that one. In other words, there are clearly favorites in the among the boys, and presumably getting the star roles and things like that. I mean, the other thing is just that so much in school was about oratory. I mean, either writing speeches or giving speeches. And I think the posher schools, the assumption was that a lot of the boys would grow up to be statesmen or, people that would have to make speeches. And so this was the sort of thing they needed to do anyway.
So in terms of, sorry, Alan.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I don't think the notary and the page intersect. And I just wonder if this is the graduation test part 2.
It's like the same actors come on, and you're going, oh no, there's going to be a long bit, isn't there?
No, they're both on stage at this point.
Yeah, well, what I should say, that there is a character listed as page throughout this version of the text. They're not necessarily the same page every scene. So I should just note to clarify that there is a specific. There are about 3 pages in this play. I mean, I'm not saying it's not the same page, but there are about 3, at least, who work for different households and therefore must be different pages. So yeah, just a little note on that, which this text does not differentiate. I was going to say something. I'm sure it was terrible. Yes, everybody's lying to each other, but most people know the other people are lying to each other now. I'm not sure. Does anyone not know that they're being lied to, or are they sure, or do they suspect it? There's, it's an interesting thing of who knows what now. Everybody sort of seems to suspect, but they may not. They may know the truth, but they not know that they know the truth. They may think they know the truth, but they think they're lying. We're all confused. It's fine. Aliki.
Yeah, I think the 2 fathers don't know the truth, or they think they know the truth, but what they know is wrong.
Sarah.
Or they actually do know the truth, but they think it's a lie.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's where we're at there. But yeah, so yeah, Act 5. It's all a bit messy. I like messy. Let's hope they don't tidy up too much, because sometimes when they tidy everything up. Also, just a note, it was mostly said in the chat. I don't think we said it on camera, but I just think I'll bring it up. We were talking. It was Rinaldo, wasn't it, who started off by going, "I don't like women. I don't care about women, etc., for ages." And we're all going in the chat. He's going to fall in love any minute. That doesn't seem to have happened at all, actually. So sideswiping our expectations that maybe he's just going to continue to be an arsehole for the whole play and won't get a redemption arc. And weirdly, I kind of feel that that's fine.
He's going to run off with Gazetta. That's how it's going to play out. That's how it's going to happen.
Sarah.
Well, not only that, but in spite of that really long speech, which just made everybody go, "Oh, what an arsehole," he hasn't actually been that misogynistic, I don't think. I mean, he's been gulling everybody, but he hasn't actually been particularly awful to any of the women or about any of the women. And so I don't know. I think if you just cut that speech at the beginning, I think he'd be a sort of. I was talking yesterday about the malcontent, about, but I don't really remember that play terribly well, but I seem to recall that had this sort of outsider figure who was kind of sorting out everybody else, but not really wanting to get involved because he was a bit of a misanthrope, and he strikes me as a sort of similar character.
Yes, well, it's much more complicated in the malcontent, because how much of that is an act, of course, because of who he is in society. But there is a question, actually, of maybe it was performative, his misogyny to a degree. Of course, what he's trying to do is persuade his mates not to get married, not to do all of that stuff. So A, it's slightly cuttable, but B, as I said last time, we can sort of push him more just in the sort of misanthrope sort of line rather than that line, because it doesn't serve any structural purpose at all, in a massive sense. So he's much less of a problematic figure than we thought he was going to be at the beginning. Simon.
Yeah, to bring back to something we also said, I think we verbalized this one rather than in a chat, but we were wondering what the nature of all fools would actually refer to, and was it everyone is like a trope of a fool? And I wonder, or is everyone just foolish? But it seems to be they're all tropes of fools, and I wonder if that Rinaldo speech is purely that we were just talking about is purely to set up the convention of the sort of the lovelorn fool or the romantic fool, or somebody who has been dumped, and maybe we'll find that later. But I don't know if anyone else is closer to discovering what all fools actually refers to, but I wondered if it's just as a convention of a fool.
Everyone is trying to fool everybody else. I mean, this is the thing. Everybody, all liars is perhaps a more modern sort of iteration of what we're talking about. They're all lying liars, and that's the game of the play, is that everybody's just lying to each other. And once you know that, the play's a lot easier to follow, because it's just how can you tell if the characters are lying? Their mouths have opened. Lois.
Well, it's also playing tricks on each other, though. I mean, they're not just lying; they're lying for a purpose. They're lying to make a fool of somebody or to get something they want. And I mean, this thing with Rinaldo is particularly silly, or rather with Valerio, because I mean, it's probably funnier in performance. It seems very odd when you read it. You know, these mates keep saying, "Oh, you're such a wonderful singer, dancer, player on the theorbo." So he does all these things, and then they say, "Oh no, you're absolutely terrible, boy. That was a scream," and he's furious. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, you know, but anyway, he then is taking vengeance on them for that, and now they found out that he was taking vengeance on them for that, so they're going to take vengeance on him for taking vengeance on them for that.
Tit for tat in a never-ending cycle of tatness.
Revenge killings.
Okay, let's go into Act 5 and see how it's all resolved. Act 5, Scene 1, enter Rinaldo alone.
Fortune, the great commandress of the world, hath divers ways to advance her followers. To some she gives honour without deserving, to other some deserving without honour. Some wit, some wealth, some wit without wealth, some wealth without wit, some nor wit nor wealth. Good smock faces, or some qualities by nature without judgment, with the which they live in sensual acceptation, and make show only, without touch of substance. My fortune is to win renown by gulling. Gostanzo, Dariotto, and Cornelio, all of which suppose, in all their different kinds, their wits entire, and in themselves no peace. All at one blow, my helmet yes unbruised, I have unhorsed, laid flat on earth for gulls. Now, in what taking poor Cornelio is, betwixt his large divorce and no divorce, I long to see what he will resolve. I lay my life he cannot chew his meat. Looks much like an ape that swallowed pills. All of this comes of bootless jealousy. And see where bootless jealousy appears.
Enter Cornelio.
I bored him straight. How now, Cornelio? Are you resolved on the divorce or no?
What's that to you? Look to your own affairs. The time requires it. Are you not engaged in some bonds forfeit to Valerio?
Yes, what of that?
Why, so am I, myself, and both our dangers great. He's arrested on a recognizance by a usuring slave.
Arrested? I'm sorry with my heart. The matter may import me much. May not our bail suffice to free him, think you?
I think it may, but I must not be seen in it, nor would I wish you, for we are both parties, and liker far to bring ourselves in trouble than bear him out. I have already made means to the officers to sequester him in private for a time, till some in secret might make his father understand his state, who would perhaps take present order for him rather than suffer him to endure the shame of his imprisonment. Now, would you but go to and break the matter closely to his father, as you can wisely do, and bring to him, this were the only way to save his credit and keep off a shrewd blow from ourselves.
I know his father will be moved past measure.
Nay, if you stand on such nice ceremonies, farewell our substance. Extreme diseases ask extreme remedies. better he should storm some little time than we be beat forever under the horrid shelter of a prison.
Where's the place?
'Tis at the Half Moon Tavern. Haste, for the matter will abide no stay.
Heaven send my speed we equal with my haste.
Exit Rinaldo.
Go, shallow scholar, you that make all gulls, you that can outsee clear-eyed jealousy. You make this slight a millstone, where your brain sticks in amidst a maze. This gull to him and to his fellow guller shall become more bitter than their baiting of my humor. Here at this tavern shall Gostanzo find Fortunio, Dariotto, Claudio, and amongst them the ringleader, his son, his husband, and his saint Valerio, that knows not of what fashion dice are made, yet ever yet looked towards a red lattice, thinks his blind sire, at drinking and at dice, with all their wenches, and at full discover his own gross folly and his son's distempers, and both shall know, although I be no scholar, yet I have thus much Latin as to say, Jam assumus ergo pares.
And exit. Okay. It's like we were having that discussion about who Rinaldo is, and he does a sort of speech that sort of slightly sums up his mission statement, and it's like, it'd be quite helpful if we had that earlier, because there's some bits there that sort of help unlock thing, and he's going, oh, I'm doing all this gulling, and oh, I'm going to try and gull Cornelio, and of course Cornelio comes in and says, oh yeah, this thing, and then afterwards go, haha, like Hercule Poirot, I have got all my suspects into this room at the same time, and chaos shall ensue. Sort of an evil Hercule Poirot, obviously. So yeah, basically the beginning of the act, candles have been trimmed, and we're just setting up the action for the denouement of the play. So that's neat and short and mostly fairly clear. Let's all go to the Half Moon Tavern.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Let's get ourselves some hot. Okay, any additional thoughts on that? It's pretty clear, I think, that yeah,
And
this is what happens when you lie to people.
I don't
You
know if I
set them
talk
up.
to myself because I'm Fortunio.
You're going to
So
talk to yourself.
I don't know. I might. So just
Your foot.
I was
I gave you the other one, didn't I?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you do, I'll take it away from you. It's fine. We'll see.
Your eyes. Keep your eyes skinned.
I'll keep it. Yeah, you were the other C. You weren't Claudio. You were the other one, weren't you?
Yes, I'm
Cornelia.
Cornelio.
Leo the jealous.
Cornelio. Yeah.
Cornelio. Yeah, with
Cornelio. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure it'll be fine. Act 5, Scene 2. We will stop at least once, I think, during this scene because it's quite long. Enter Valerio, Fortunio, Claudio, Page, Gratiana, Gazetta, Bellanora, a drawer or two setting a table.
Set me the table there. We will shift rooms to see if Fortune will shift chances with us. Sit, ladies, sit. Fortunio, place thy wench. And Claudio, place you Dariotto's mistress. I wonder where that neat spruce slave becomes. I think he was some barber's son, by the mass. 'Tis such a picked fellow. Not a hair about his whole bulk, but it stands in print. Each pin hath his due place, not any point, but hath his perfect tie, fashion, and grace. A thing whose soul is specially employed in knowing where best gloves, best stockings, waistcoats curiously wrought are sold. Sacks milliners' shops for all new tires and fashions, and can tell ye what new devices of all sorts there are, and that there is not in the whole Rialto but one new-fashioned waistcoat or one nightcap, one pair of gloves pretty or well perfumed, and from a pair of gloves of half a crown to 20 crowns, will to a very scoot smell out the price. And for these womanly parts he is esteemed a witty gentleman.
Enter Dariotto.
See where he comes.
Good save you, lovely ladies.
Aye, well said, lovely Paris. Your wall-eye must ever first be gloating on men's wives. You think to come upon us being half drunk, and so to part the freshest man among us? But you shall overtake us, I'll be sworn.
Tush, man. Where are your dice? Let's fall to them.
We have been at him. Drawer, call for more.
First let's have wine. Dice have no perfect edge without the liquid whetstone of the syrup.
True, and to welcome Dariotto's lateness, he shall, unpledged, carouse 1 crowned cup to all the ladies' health.
I am well pleased.
Come on, let us vary our sweet time with sundry exercises. Boy, tobacco, and draw, you must get us music too. Calls in a cleanly noise, the slaves grow lousy.
You shall have such as we can get you, sir.
Exit drawer.
Let's have some dice. I pray thee, they are cleanly.
Page, let me see that leaf.
It is not leaf, sir. 'Tis pudding cane tobacco.
But I mean your linstock, sir. What leaf is that, I pray?
Oh, I pray you see, sir, for I cannot read.
Sfoot! A rank stinking satire! This had been enough to have poisoned every man of us.
And now you speak of that, my boy once lighted a pipe of cane tobacco with a piece of valid ballad, and I'll swear I had a singing in my head a whole week after.
Well, the old verse is, Apotheus incipe eoseum.
Enter drawer with wine and a cup.
Drawer, fill out this gentleman's carouse and harden him for our society.
Well, ladies, here is your honoured healths.
What, Dariotto, without hand or knee?
Well said, Fortunio. Oh, you are a rare courtier. Your knee, good signor, I beseech your knee.
Nay, pray you, let's take it by degrees. Valerio, on our feet first, for this will bring us too soon upon our knees.
Sir, there are no degrees of order in a tavern. Here you must, I charge ye, run all ahead. Slight, courtier, down. I hope you are no elephant, you have joints.
Well, sir, here's to the ladies, on my knees.
I'll be their pledge.
Enter Gostanzo and Rinaldo behind them, unseen presumably initially.
Not yet, Valerio. This he must drink unpledged.
He shall not. I will give him this advantage.
Oh, no, what's here? Are these the officers?
Enter Cornelio, similarly, upstage or something.
Here is his pledge. Here's to our common friend Cornelio's health.
Health to Gazetta, poison to our husband.
Excellent guests. These are my daily guests.
Draw, make even the impartial scales of justice, give it to Claudio, and from him fill round. Come, Dariotto, set me, let the rest come in when they have done the ladies right.
Set me? Do you know what belongs to setting?
The dull slave was I to be thus gulled.
Why, Rinaldo, what mean you to entrap your friend and bring his father to this spectacle? You're a friend indeed.
'Tis very good, sir. Perhaps my friend or I, before we part, may make even with you.
Come, let's see him round.
Do so at all. Oh, a plague upon these dice. Another health. Sfoot, I shall have no luck till I be drunk. Come on. Here's to the comfort the cavalier, my father, should take in me if he now saw me and would do me right.
I'll pledge it and his health, Valerio.
Here's a good husband.
I pray you have patience, sir.
Now have at all, and 'twere £1,000.
Hold, sir. I bar the dice.
What, sir? Are you there? Oh, fills a fresh bottle. By this light, Sir Knight, you shall do right.
Enter Marc Antonio.
Oh, thou ungracious villain.
Come, come. We shall have you now. Thunder forth some of your thrifty sentences. As gravely. For as much, Valerius, as everything has time and a pudding has two, yet ought not satisfaction to swerve so much from defalaction of well-disposed people, as that indemnity should prejudice what security doth insinuate. A trial, yet once again.
Here's a good side. You're well encountered, sir. Did I not tell you you'd overshoot yourself with too much wisdom?
Sir, your wisest do so. Fill the old man some wine.
Here's a good infant.
Why, sir, alas, I'll wager with your wisdom he consort his thoughts drew him to it. For of himself he is both virtuous, bashful, innocent. Comes not at city, knows no city art, but plies your husbandry, dares not view a wench.
Father, he comes upon you.
Here's a son.
Whose wife is Gratiana now, I pray?
Sing your old song no more. Your brain's too short to reach into these policies.
'Tis true. Mine eyes soon blinded, and yourself would say so if you knew all. Where lodged your son last night? Do you know that, with all your policy?
You'll say he lodged with you, and did not I foretell you all this must for colour's sake be brought about only to blind your eyes?
By heaven, I chanced this morn, I know not why, to pass by Gratiana's bedchamber, and whom saw I fast by her naked side but your Valerio?
Had you not warning given, did not I bid you watch my courtier well, or he would set a crest o' your son's head?
Now that was not all, for by them, on a stool, my son sat laughing to see you so gulled.
Oh, 'tis too plain.
Why, sir, do you suspect it the more for that?
Suspected? Is there any so gross a wittol as, if 'twere his wife, would sit by her so tamely?
Why not, sir? To blind my eyes?
Well, sir, I was deceived, but I shall make it prove a dear deceit to the deceiver.
No, sir, let's not have a new infliction set on an old fault. He did confess his fault upon his knees. You pardoned it, and swore 'twas from your heart.
Swore, a great piece of work. The wretch shall know I have a daughter here to give my land to. I'll give my daughter all. The prodigal shall not have one poor house to hide his head in.
I humbly thank you, sir, and vow all duty my life can yield you.
Why are you so thankful?
For giving your daughter all your lands, who is my wife, and so you gave them me.
Better and better.
Pray, sir, be not moved. You drew me kindly to your house and gave me access to woo your daughter, whom I loved, and since, by honoured marriage, made my wife.
No, all my choler fly out in your wits. Good tricks of youth. I'faith, no indecorum. Knight's son, knight's daughter. Marc Antonio, give me your hand. There is no remedy. Marriage is ever made by destiny.
Silence, my masters.
And we're going to pause there on that silence. Hold on to that moment in the text, because I just want to slightly break up that bit. So it's all started to come out. They're all gathered in the tavern, and we're getting some bit of tavern business, bit of gambling, bit of tobacco, different kinds of tobacco. Different things to light your tobacco with, using a bit of paper with some slanderous material on it. Hey, well, libelous, it's sort of written down. Yeah, so you get a little bit of that at the beginning as everyone sort of enters upstage and gets to watch people being bad, and then all the stuff starts tumbling out, one thing after another. And I think this is a scene that works better if you can see it, because it's like who's tricking who and when and thing and all the stuff, and the person with but yeah, it's Gostanzo seems to be taking it relatively good step there. You know, it's like, I disown you, and it's, oh, thanks, I am owned, thank you. I've and it's sort of that back and forth is quite nice. Simon.
Yeah, I must say it was very hard to stay engaged with it. I think it has to be almost done overlapping, like everyone's so completely getting more and more trolleyed that it's almost overlaps, and I think that's the only way really to have
'Cause it's not-
any. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, because it's not an excessively long little sequence. In fact, actually, you don't have that much time to sort of get into all of the vices that they're getting up to before it turns into the "what have you been doing, young fella, me lad?" Sort of action. Alan.
There's also a question as to at what point do the ones who've entered in the background actually come forward into the main part of the action, and how much of their stuff is aside to one another.
I think there is one indicator when there's an indicator of stepping forward, advancing. So that's the point, definitely from Gostanzo on that point onwards. But you're right, everything else prior to that, they're all asides because nobody else is seeing them until then. Lois.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to get that, but the gulling of Rinaldo is essentially that trick to get him to go to Gostanzo, which happens off stage, about this debt that they're both somehow involved in, and bring him to the tavern so that he will catch out his son and bring out the whole denouement. But it happens very quickly and rather subtly. But somebody does say, Rinaldo, you made a fool of yourself bringing the last person in the world you would want to come to this place.
Yes, and he does have a moment of going, "Oh no, I've been trapped." Grr, arg. So it is all there, and I think again, this is all in the playing. I think we've got to think a bit about how it's staged as well, because there's a lot of bodies about, even if most of the time there's only about 2 or 3 people talking at any one particular moment. So. I'm starting to think back to some Marstons where you would have a cast of thousands, but they'd all advance to the point where they can be seen and then move on, and they'd all sort of orbit round.
The choreography is really important.
Okay, let's
kind of cinematic, where you.
Yeah. What's everybody else doing while they're having this round? Tiptoeing, find the doors locked. Okay, we got to Rinaldo. So we've just had Gostanzo and Fortunio doing their little I'm married to your daughter, yay! And Gostanzo goes, "Oh, fine." And Rinaldo silences.
"Silence, my masters. Now here all are pleased. Only but Cornelio, who lacks but persuasion, to reconcile himself to his fair wife. Good sir, will you, of all men, our best speaker, persuade him to receive her into grace?"
"That I will gladly, and he shall be ruled. Good Cornelio, I have heard of your wayward jealousy, and I must tell you plain as a friend, you're an ass. You must pardon me. I knew your father."
"Then you must pardon him indeed, sir."
Understand me. Put case Dariotto loved your wife, whereby you would seem to refuse her. Would you desire to have such a wife as no man could love but yourself?
Answer but that, Cornelio.
Understand me. Say Dariotto has kissed your wife or performed other offices of that nature, whereby they did converse together at bed and at board, as friends may seem to do.
Marc, but the now understand me.
Yet if there come no proofs but that her actions were cleanly, or in discreet private, why 'twas a sign of modesty. And will you blow the horn yourself, when you may keep it to yourself? Go to. You are a fool. Understand me?
Do understand him, Cornelio?
Nay, Cornelio, I tell you again, I knew your father. He was a wise gentleman, and so was your mother. Methinks I see her yet. Lusty, stout woman, bore great children. You were the very scoundrel of them all, but let that pass. As for your mother, she was a wise, most flippant tongue she had, and could set out her tale with as good grace as any she in Florence, come cut and long tail, and she was honest enough too. But yeah, by your leave, she would tickle Dob now and then, as well as the best on them. By Jove, 'tis true, Cornelio. I speak it not to flatter you. Your father knew it well enough, and would do as you do. think you? And would he do as you do, think you? Set rascals to undermine her, or look to her water, as they say? No, when he saw 'twas but her honor, but her humor, for his own quietness' sake, he made a back door to his house for convenience, got a bell to his front door, and had an odd fashion in ringing by which she and her maid knew him, and would stand talking to his next neighbor to prolonged time, that all things might be rid cleanly out of the way before he came, for the credit of his wife. This was wisdom now, for a man's own quiet.
Here was a man.
I'm going to stop
Cornelio.
there because I think we
Yes.
should have just unpacked that speech because it's like Gostanzo's trying to help. I'm not sure he's helping.
Oh, really?
It's just going, if you think your wife's going to cuckold you, create a system whereby you don't see it.
Just like your father, yes.
Yeah, just like your father did with your mother, who everybody knows slept around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your mother. Yeah, we all would like to have, but never mind. It's
Like,
just,
who was your father?
yeah, it's just, Sarah.
Yeah, also, and please point this out if I've missed it, because I might well have missed it, because I'm still not entirely sure what's occurring. But surely the whole point of this is Gazetta hasn't slept with Dariotto. She said earlier that she didn't, and she hasn't. And, like, what? So what is this all about?
I think because he's trying to address the thing. You've got this jealousy. Your wife is very attractive. I'm sure there'll be lots of people interested in her. But that's just what the world's like. You've just got to find a system of dealing with it, and maybe you should have a little bell so they know you're coming. Wow, this play does like to throw these interesting surprises at me, and I'm very interested in this. Simon.
Yeah, I just think they're clearly, it's not directed, but clearly because of the sentence structure, and we're all laughing, and Alan just even highlighted it in the chat there. I knew your father; he was a wise gentleman, and so was your mother. It's they're clearly just half cut, exactly to verbatim quote what Alan just put in the. I think it's just done farcically, and they're all mental, so there's no real resolution. It's just almost like they're just absolutely battered, and it's all coming out as a flow.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Gostanzo is because no, because he's only just come in. Lois.
Yeah, well, Gostanzo obviously likes the sound of his own voice, and he's got carried away on this. But I have a feeling a lot of this is coming from Rabelais, because there's a speech very like it near the end of Eastward Ho, which I know I have traced. It has been traced by other people to Rabelais. I think there's a long section in that where I think it's Panurge is trying to decide whether to marry or not, and the main thing that was putting him off marriage was the idea of being a cuckold. And then somebody makes this great long speech about, why not? And you wouldn't want to marry somebody that nobody else could find attractive, etc. So I think a lot of this is probably coming from there.
But what I like about it is he thinks he's trying, he's helping. I think that's this is it's like the with a best man speech that just goes horribly wrong, isn't it? Yes. This is a witty and abuse, and this will sort the problem out. And it's like, I else noticed Cornelio hasn't said a bloody word. He's just standing here listening to this. What is Cornelio doing during this sequence? We'll find out in a moment, because he actually will say some words in a bit. Yeah. But it's quite interesting to see where that is all going. Okay, anyway, I once again paused as mid-scene. This was wisdom now for a man's own quiet, apparently.
Yeah.
Here was a man, Cornelio.
What, I say, young men think old men are fools, but old men know young men are fools.
Why, hark you two knights, you think I will forsake Gazetta?
And will you not?
Why, there's your wisdom. Why did I make a show of divorce, think you?
Pray you, why, sir?
Only to bridle her stout stomach. How did I draw off on the color of my divorce? I did train the woodcock, Dariotto, into the net. Sorry. Drew him to my house, gave him opportunity with my wife. As you say, my father dealt with his wife's friends, only to train him in. Let him alone with my wife in her bedchamber, and sometimes found him a bed with her, and went my way again softly, only to draw him into the pit.
Oh, this was well handled indeed, Cornelio.
Aye, sir, now I commend your wisdom.
Why, if I had been so minded as you think, I could have flung his pantable down the stairs and done him some other disgrace. But I winked at it, and drew on the good fool more and more, only to bring him within my compass.
Why, this was policy in grain.
And now shall the world see I am wise as my father.
Is't come to this? Then I will make a speech in praise of this reconcilement, including therein the praise and honour of the most fashionable and authentical horn. Stand close, gentles, and be silent.
He gets into a chair.
Oh, come on, let's hear his wit in this potable humour.
The one you just heard there was Sarah seeing how long the next speech is. So you didn't get much to say yesterday. There's a balancing act.
The course of the world, like the life of man, is said to be divided into several ages, as we into infancy, childhood, youth, and so forward to old age. So the world into golden age, the silver, the brass, the iron, the leaden, the wooden, and now into this present age, which we term the horned age. Not that but former ages have enjoyed this benefit as well as our times, but that in ours it is more common, and nevertheless precious. It is said that in the golden age of the world the use of gold was not then known, an argument of the simplicity of that age. Lest therefore succeeding ages should hereafter impute the same fault to us, which we lay upon the first age, that we, living in the horned age of the world, should not understand the use, the virtue, the honour, and the very royalty of the horn, I will, in brief, sound the praises thereof, that they who are already in possession of it may bear their heads aloft, as being proud of such lofty accoutrements, and they that are but in possibility may be ravished with a desire to be in possession. A trophy so honourable and unmatchably powerful that it is able to raise any man from a beggar to an emperor's fellow, a duke's fellow, a nobleman's fellow, alderman's fellow, so glorious that it deserves to be worn, by most opinions, in the most conspicuous place about a man. For what worthier crest can you bear than the horn, which, if it might be seen with our mortal eyes, what a wonderful spectacle would there be, and how highly would they ravish the beholders! But their substance is incorporeal, not falling under sense, nor mixed of the gross concretion of elements, but a quintessence beyond them, a spiritual essence, invisible and everlasting. And this hath been the cause that many men have called their being into question, whether there be such a thing in rerum natura or not, because they are not to be seen, as though nothing that were not to be seen. Who ever saw the wind? Yet what wonderful effects are seen of it! It drives the clouds, yet no man sees it. It rocks the house, bears down trees, castles, steeples, yet who sees it? In like sort does your horn. It swells the forehead, yet none sees it. It rocks the cradle, yet none sees it. So that you plainly perceive sense is no judge of essence. The moon, to any man's sense, seems to be horned, yet who knows not the moon to be ever perfectly round? So, likewise, your heads seem ever to be round when they are indeed that they oftentimes horned. For their original, it is unsearchable. Nature they are not, for there is no beast born with horns more than with teeth. Created they were not, for ex nihilo nihil fit. Then will you ask me, how came they into the world? I know not. But I am sure women brought them into this part of the world. Howsoever, some doctors are of the opinion that they came in with the devil, and not unlike. For as the devil brought sin into the world, but the woman brought it to the man. So it may very well be said that the devil brought horns into the world, but the women brought them to the man. For their power, it is generally over the world. No nation so barbarous, no country so proud, but doth equal homage to the horn. Europa, when she was carried through the sea by the Saturnian bull, was said, for fear of falling, to have held on by the horn. And what is this but a plain showing to us that all Europe, which took name from that Europa, should likewise hold by the horn? So that I say, it is universal, over the face of the world, general over the face of Europe, and common over the face of this country. What city, what town, what village, what street, nay, what house can quit itself of this prerogative? I have read that the lion once made a proclamation through all the forest that all horned beasts should depart forthwith upon pain of death. If this proclamation should be made through our forest, Lord, what pressing, what running, what flying would there be, even from all the parts of it? He that had but a bunch of flesh in his head would away, and some, foolishly fearful, would imagine the shadow of his ears to be horns. Ah, alas, how desert would this forest be left! To conclude, for their force is inevitable, for were they not inevitable, then might either properness of person secure a man, or wisdom prevent him, or greatness exempt, or riches redeem them. But present experience hath taught us that in this case all these stand in no stead. For we see the properest men take part of them. The best wits cannot avoid them, for then should poets be no cuckolds. Nor can money redeem them, for then would rich men fine for their horns as they do for offices. But this is held for a maxim, that there are more rich cuckolds than poor. Lastly, for continuance of the horn, it is undeterminable till death, neither do they determine with the wife's death, howsoever ignorant writers hold opinion they do. For as when a knight dies, his lady still retains the title of lady, when a company is cast, yet the captain still retains the title of captain, so, though the wife die, by whom this title came to her husband, yet by the courtesy of the city, he shall be a cuckold during life. Let all ignorant asses prate what they list.
Notable wag. Come, sir, shake hands with him in whose high honour you have made this speech.
And you, sir, come join hands. You're one amongst them.
Very well done. Now take your several wives and spread like wild geese, though you now grow tame. Live merrily together and agree. Horns cannot be kept off with jealousy.
And they exit, leaving us with the epilogue.
Since all our labours are as you can like, we all submit to you, nor dare presume to think there's any real worth in them. Sometimes feasts please the cooks and not the guests. Sometimes the guests and curious cooks contemn them. Our dishes we entirely dedicate to our kind guests. But since you differ so, some to like only mirth without taxations, some to count such works trifles and such like, we can but bring you meat and set you stools, and to our best cheer say, you are all welcome.
And exit, end of play. The epilogue is a much more conventional epilogue. It's the prologue, which was frankly impenetrable. I mean, you sort of understood vaguely what the prologue was trying to do, even if you didn't actually understand what it was doing as it did it. But the epilogue is fairly straightforward. People have different opinions, but please like the play. I know, Sarah, you whimpered somewhat before you did that speech. It was actually quite a good speech. I was sitting there going, okay, we could trim it. But actually, as a thing where someone stands on a chair and does a set piece thing about cuckoldry, actually, that was quite clever stuff. I'll go to Sarah, then Aliki.
Yeah, but what the duck was it? I mean, this is a boy's play. Which poor boy was given that to do, and why?
A very
Well,
naughty
no,
one.
well, basically, they've just unveiled. They've just basically Cornelio has sort of been unmasked not only as a cuckold, but basically as a withole in this context, in the sense that he's sort of knowingly allowed his wife to sort of be in a position of cuckoldry, and actually he seems to be in a situation where he's sort of caught them at some point. Well, that's what he seems to say.
Yeah.
So it suggests that actually we were saying earlier they're not having an affair. Well, actually, it kind of looks like they were, and that he walked in and went, "Okay, carry on." So it's like sort of trying to find a way of saying, "Hey, it's fine to be cuckolded because everyone's cuckolded. Isn't being a cuckold fine and lovely?" And as just a set piece way of going, rather than turning to the audience and going, "What are we going to do now? What are we going to do now?" You get this, and I genuinely found it really entertaining. Really surprised. I thought I was going to be born witless. But actually, a lot of the long speeches in this have turned out to be fine. Where you look at it on the page and go, "Please, dear God, no." And you've got to remember, they're boys. They have elastic memories. I don't want to learn this now. Heaven help me trying to learn this now. But 12, they can learn that. It's fine. Aliki.
Yeah, so I've recently been to a production of The School for Wives, which has a very similar, if not quite as elaborate speech about the benefits of cuckoldry. So I'm curious about Lois's point that it comes from Rabelais, because it's
I
But
think it
also,
does. Yeah.
yeah, but
There's
also
something similar at the end of at the end of Eastward Ho. There's a lot of stuff, and there's also a speech about the horn. There's a scene where somebody is setting up these horns at Cuckold's Haven, and then he has a big speech about the horn. So yeah, I think, and that's coming from Rabelais too, apparently.
The other thing is, I do think it's a problem for modern production, no matter how much Rob enjoyed it, because we don't have the same preoccupation with cheating and what it means about the cheated on partner. We don't have this sense that this is a ridiculous person that seems to be. Anyway, so I don't quite know what you do with something that ends with this as a comic tour de force, because I don't think that's how it'll land for us.
Sarah.
It's a good point. I think one way you could do it, although I don't know if this would be the best way, would be to play up the patriarchy in this play, because there are female characters, but they don't have a lot to say, and this is all about men lying to each other. And the women do a bit of conniving as well, but it's like mainly about guys getting one over on each other, and there's no sense in any of this talk about cuckoldry, that it applies to, cuckoldry doesn't. It never really applies to wives. You never hear about wives wearing the horns. It's a patriarchal thing. It's a male thing, because men can cheat on their wives all the time and nobody thinks anything of it. But, cuckolding is a specifically male thing. So if you kind of played that up in the context of the play, so the women who are very silent anyway are kind of depicted as being, very much living within a patriarchal society where it is all about the guys, which, to be honest, I think you would get from the play anyway. But if you kind of highlighted that with, the way you directed the actors and the way you kind of the setting you put it in, the scenery, the costume, all the rest of it, I wonder if that's how you would make it work, because it's like, this is a specifically male world. And this is a specifically male condition, this thing of being cuckolded. And why do you put up with being cuckolded? Well, because you've got all the power. You're the guys, and if this means that your wives have to go and cheat on the side because they've been married off to you and they don't necessarily love you, or they've got no money of their own or whatever, and they just go and play away, that's just something you put up with because it's part of your fabulous privilege of being a man. Maybe.
Because it's interesting, because what the play does earlier, he could divorce his wife. I mean, it's all set up. He's got the paperwork, and by the time we get to the end of the play, it seems that not only does it seem like that that she was actually having some sort of affair, but you know knew about it, watched it, and yet is sort of weirdly kind of fighting it. I'm not sure it wholly makes sense, but it's interesting the way it's sort of almost undermining itself as it's going along. There's something sort of absurdist about what this play is doing. I don't know how fully we can go into that. Lynn, then Lois.
Well, I'm not really sure what order to do this. I think I'm going to bounce off of Sarah first. I mean, I really like that idea. I'm not sure what that would look like. This sort of, portrait of patriarchy and how that's maybe not the best system. And something you said about, men and power. I think it's psychologically, I think it's kind of the reverse of how you expressed it, that men have put themselves in this position where they've taken the power, they've grabbed the power, politically, socially, all of that, because the ultimate power is the power of life and death, and they will never have that. It's male jealousy at women's ability to reproduce, and the fact that they never know who their children are for sure, and women always do. It's that sort of like really deep psychological kind of Freudian thing going on that I mean there's a theory that that's where patriarchy comes from, and I tend to give some credibility to that. So yeah, and so I like the idea of this sort of portrait of patriarchy. So there's that. Then what I was gonna say before Sarah's really smart comment was that I am not at all sure that Cornelio is not lying, because Gazetta says earlier in the play, I have a husband being vainly jealous. And later in that speech, she says that long sentence, the syntax, which otherwise I should not, lest it teach me that which I would otherwise not dream upon. Like, I wouldn't dream of cheating on my husband. And she's saying this in the presence of just other women. So at least at that time, I tended to believe her. So I'm not at all sure that Cornelio isn't just making that shit up. God knows why, but God knows why anyone does anything in this play. Yeah, the whole thing is like, no woman can actually keep her legs closed, even if she's married. I have a problem with that.
Someone else was next. Was it Aliki or was it Lois?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, one thing about cuckolding, that one reason why men are so terrified of it, of course, is inheritance and property, and the idea that their property will go to somebody who isn't actually their own child. And that is a tremendous fear, I would imagine, in this period. But yes, I wondered the same thing in a way about his speech, whether he's, I think the point of it is, as with quite a few of the speeches, that people think they're being terribly clever. And in fact, they're just showing what idiots they are, because, in this case, he is saying, yes, I really wanted to do this. I mean, I wanted to have a fake divorce because I thought that would really tame her, make her behave better. So I set this whole thing up so I could have a cause for divorce. And I mean, he sounds more and more like an idiot all the time. And whether she actually has cuckolded him or not, I mean, it's just been such an incredibly stupid thing to do anyway, and counterproductive, and may well have given her the idea. I mean, that would be something you could possibly bring out in a production, that she's now become attracted to Dariotto and decided to have an affair with him. You could end it by her passing him a note or something. The other thing I wondered about was, because I agree that it's a bit difficult to end a play with a big bravura speech for an audience that isn't terribly interested in hearing big bravura speeches and seeing how well this kid could learn all this stuff and so on. And I don't know, the country wife ends with a dance of cuckolds. You could have something like that, a kind of celebration of the horn, I suppose, at this point. But surely the main thing is that just about all these guys have thought they were being terribly smart, and they've all been cheating each other. And what is the point? I mean, you could somehow maybe have an ending and that could bring the women on, with just a, sort of so what, or, what did they think they were doing, or something.
Well, it's also that we were talking about Gostanzo and his terribly helpful speech.
Yes.
It kind of almost suggests that that Cornelio himself might be a bastard.
Yeah.
That none of this matters because everybody's lying. Again, sort of going back to that thing, everybody's lies, everyone's a fool, everyone is fooling everybody else, everyone's fooling themselves. And I do think there is something about that idea that maybe, he's saying, I did all this stuff, and he's trying to make himself look big himself up. And actually it's just making himself even smaller and less interesting. Aliki, I think, did you actually did you have a
I was going to say that Dariotto denies that relationship as well to other characters he has no need to lie to. So yeah, it does sound to me like he's decided, Cornelio has decided, oh, well, if the sophisticated thing to be is a cuckold, then I'm going to be one too, and I'm going to be the most cuckoldest cuckold that ever got cuckolded.
And there is something quite satisfying about that as an ending, actually. That that we don't have someone being put through an ignominious divorce and all of the social consequences there, but actually the compromise is that he kind of owns his own cuckoldry and basically sets it. It's now been set up that he can be cuckolded and that she can have this have an affair, even if she hasn't actually had it at all. And then we get into the magnanimous cuckold. Plotline, which you could pair this off with. I'm sure there are some other plays that would pair off quite nicely with. Actually, I mean, literally the magnanimous cuckold, which is a play. Which
yes, you could have all crowning Cornelia with horns and garlands and celebrating him and lifting him on their shoulders and
so yeah, I mean, I kind of suspect that actually, that there is a sense with this play of going, I kind of enjoyed it, but I don't quite know what the hell it is, and I'm not wholly sure I followed all of it. But some of the set pieces are really good, and I think with a good cast and a good bit of pacing, and not even necessarily cutting, just working that language and making it move. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't cut it. But it is a sort of kind of, I'd just like to see what happens. I kind of feel we can't predict actually how this would go down. We've been in this situation before with plays where you're going, oh, I'm not sure anyone's going to go with this, and then you do it and then go, I know they kind of do, and not uncritically. I mean, people can watch a play and come out going, yeah, that's not a good ending, but it was still an interesting ride. Or in this case, it's not even that it's a bad ending. It's just like, did it end? It's sort of resolved itself, but it's like we didn't actually have that many full resolutions of the various love plots, actually. And there's still quite a lot of things in the air, potentially as to what could go horribly wrong in 5 minutes' time. Simon, then Lynn.
Yeah, I found it deeply unsatisfying as a denouement because there wasn't one. And my thoughts, I think there's an argument to say that you could try and modernize it and make it about the concept of manifest destiny, maybe around the Cornelio character. Other than that, it's kind of wafer thin.
Lynn.
So, Rob, I just want to see what happens. And combine out with, Sarah's idea of this is sort of an examination of the power structure. And we've had this idea before, someone has. What if, speaking of let's just see what happens, you cast it gender flipped and did it as a drag play. So all the male parts are played by women, and all the women, and then the your male actors have like very little to do, which I just sort of find satisfying. And see what kind of effect that has on your audience. And I think that is going to underscore the point is that we are looking at the patriarchal structures. We're not pretending that this is reality or how it should be. We're not advocating for this worldview. Definitely make it, more presentational rather than representational, and kind of see what that effect would be.
Sarah.
Yeah, I have a final thought. Are we
Yeah,
into
yeah.
final
I
thoughts,
think
aren't
we're
we?
well into that area of the universe.
I just wanted to say I really like this play. I kind of liked it yesterday, actually, though I didn't really say as much because I didn't know quite where it was going, and also I only had the sketchiest notion of what was going on a lot of the time. But I did really enjoy it yesterday, and then I really like this ending, and I don't know if it's just because I've done so many, I've sat in and read on so many early modern comedies where they do have, very neat, well tied up endings, which I absolutely hate. Usually because the female characters, just don't come out of it very well, and perhaps it's that, I don't know, but I just really like this because that does not happen, and the fact that the female characters are almost an afterthought, I actually don't mind, because in a way it's not like, a lot of comedies, there's this pretense that the women matter when clearly they don't. By the end of the play, they clearly don't matter. Whereas this, there's no pretense at that, really. This is about, I was going to say men, but it's people, really, but it's just they're all men. Lying, dissembling, there's power struggles going on, because that's what all this lying is about, really. It's like, I want to marry so and so, you won't let me, so I'm going to find a way around it, or I'm going to bully you and say you're crap at this when you're not, or pretend you're good at this when you're crap at it, because I want to have one over on you. It's all about, sort of, lying is usually about power, actually, or control in some way. And the fact that, there's no pat ending, and it ends with this kind of bizarre but really absurd speech. I am just really, really enjoying that, and I would actually really love to direct this, and I don't know quite what direction it would go off in, but I think you could have a hell of a good time, finding that direction and getting it on stage, for an audience in a way that an audience would enjoy.
I mean, one of the interesting things structurally about this, and I think this is why you like it a lot more than a lot of the comedies we've done, because a lot of the comedies have young people want to get married, and they have some sort of obstruction that stops them getting married. Well, they're all the only marriage that mattered in this plot already happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's already done, and so in a sense there is no meaningful arc to this play. What this play is about is a little bit of acceptance, and closure is the closest you can get to a climax to the play, of just going, oh well, it's fine, I won't disown you, and there's some other stuff going on, but it's all plate spinning. It's all Chapman going, here are some people, they're doing some stuff, here are some set pieces, there is a plot, but it doesn't really matter very much. Let's just make it as confused as possible. And I think, we have been genuinely confused, but I don't think an audience necessarily would be. But they would be. The delight is in the untangling of almost, it's not quite a farce, but it has some of those farcical mechanics. And I think that's where we as performers and we as directors might be drawn to this, because we're going, okay, there are characters I could play, there are set pieces I could act in, and as a director, can I keep all those plates spinning? Can I keep the energy going? Can I keep the interest in this? And so in that sense, maybe it's attracting us like as a challenge, because it's all there, but it's not a gimme. It's not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. Lois, I think, was waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I find it quite fascinating too, just because of the incredible complexity of the plot and the way that you have to keep trying to keep track of who's following whom and who's lying to whom. I think one way to do it, I mean, I was thinking about this, is every time somebody succeeds in fooling somebody else, there's a lot of laughter. Everybody laughs, and this just keeps on as a sort of motif through the play. So, A has fooled B, ha, ha, ha. Now B has fooled A, ha, ha, ha. Now B and A have combined and fooled C, ha, ha, ha. And at the end, enormous amount of laughter from all the men, And then, the women maybe have their own little bit right at the end where they laugh in a kind of air of, I suppose that was funny, but I didn't really get it or something. And then just end with that, some sense of what was all this laughter about anyway.
And it's interesting also just in terms of characters, do they really have a gender? Fortunio, what is Fortunio for apart from plot device? And we're talking about how again a lot of the female characters are largely there to as a plot function. But it's some of the men are just there as a plot function. Rinaldo is says a lot. I don't know how well drawn he genuinely is. But he's definitely, he says a lot. But Fortunio, it's like, how many lines did you have yesterday, Sarah? And how many did anybody have today? I mean, he almost does nothing apart from be the other person in the love rhombus that this play has in store. I think Gazetta has a little bit to do. I think there's definitely at least one interesting scene with Gazetta, but I'm almost thinking you only need one woman to play all of the women because it's like, and some of these other parts, it's not a massive cast as well, which is the other reason why it's sort of appealing to me, because actually the core company's really tight. And for a comedy, you're sort of worried that everyone turns up together in the final scene, but actually how many of them are really there and how many of them really matter? Any other final thoughts before I close the session? Who wants to leap in with anything new or additional? You may have noticed this is a trend. I'm not going around the room because everyone tends to say what they've already said. But yeah, if you have any additional or new thoughts, I think it's perfectly stageable. There's nothing complex about it to do in terms of getting the number of actors together. Is actually doable for a relatively small cast for the early modern equivalent. There are a few problematic elements. There's one or two occasional quite racist lines. They can be quietly excised. I think Rinaldo's misogyny at the beginning could just go. I think we can just shift him to be a misanthrope. I think that's kind of fine. And then it's just, make sure your actors know what the hell's going on. And then hopefully the audience will as well. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Anything else in the room? Anything else? No, we are all silent. All silent. No one's waving. Okay, well, that's it for All Fools. Were we all fools? Were you fools for watching? Who can tell? Who can tell? All that remains to thank all these wonderful fools for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
Just tickle Dob now and then.